Okay, so now let's continue and let's have a look at maybe building out a bit of the front end. So we have this one here obviously is working and it's all fine, but we still have an empty classifieds app directory. So I'm thinking for this one here, we could just go into here, go into the classifieds app, and let's just do a yarn init-y. Let's open up package.json over here. And inside of this file here, we're just going to add in a few packages. So yarn add, and let's just do a -d, a parcel bundler like so. And we'll wait for that to install. So we're going to use Parcel for this project just because it makes things a little bit simpler. If this were production, I'd generally go with Webpack, but as I said, like really, it's just up to you and for the needs of your projects. I tend to find Parcel to make life a lot easier when I'm setting up for the first time. But if I'm doing something which is more, I guess, technical and more like kind of customized, then I'd probably consider using Webpack. So now inside of classifieds here, let's just go create a new file, src index.html, and let's just put in a basic HTML document like so. Let's get rid of this one and that one there. So we're going to keep the character set. We can keep the language as well. And we're going to call this one a classifieds app. And inside of the body here, let's just do div id equals app, and then script src is equal to /index.js. So just like that, and then src, right click new file, index.js, and let's just do a very, very simple React quote unquote app. This one's React DOM, not React app. And let's do a render h1 working, document.get element by ID, and let's write app inside of here. So now that we've got that, inside of classifieds app here, we're just going to add in a script. So scripts, and we're going to do watch, and then parcel src /index.html, and the port number we're going to use is 7001. So we're going to use 7001 because essentially what I'm trying to do here is make all of the 7000 ports the ones that are accessible by the user. That's kind of like the informal thing of what I'm going for here. I'm just trying to be a little bit more organized when it comes to these things, but at the end of the day, it really doesn't matter too much. So now we have something like this. Let's go in here and write yarn watch, and it should start running and then installing React and React DOM because we are using them inside of here. So that's one of the great features of Parcel, is it can actually install dependencies for you. So we're just going to wait for that to finish. Okay, so now let's go and check out localhost 7001, and you'll see that our page says working. So what we're actually going to do here is firstly, let's go inside src, open up index.js here. Oh, actually, let's first go into package.json and let's add in an alias. So for our alias here, we're going to do a hash root once again. So we're sticking with that kind of same hash root theme here, which we're going to use. In order to get that working, we have to restart Parcel. So I'm going to restart it like that, and right click here. I'm going to create a new file and go components root.js like that. And I'm going to just create this component like so, and then open this up, create new file, index.js, do that. So we have index.js, we have root, and now we're going to render the root component. So import root from hash root /components /root like that, and I'm going to render it here onto the page. So now that we've got that, let's just check, make sure it says root. Okay, that's fine. And now let's just add in a few basic styles using styled components. So we're going to go up here and do import create global style from styled components. And we're going to go here, const global style is equal to create global style, like that. And then we're going to do @import URL, and we're going to grab a Google font. So here we're going to go to google.com/fonts, and we're going to grab Roboto. So to search fonts here, write Roboto, and then click plus, and then go here, and we're going to customize and choose 400 and 700. So we have those two here, which I'm going to use for this project. You really can use whatever you want, but that's what I'm going to do here. Do something like that. And then I'm going to do HTML body app like so. And then gonna do height 100%, margin 0, padding 0, and then width 100%. These are some basic styles that I tend to like to do for the majority of my projects. We're gonna do a Roboto sans serif here down the bottom, and then let's go here, let's do that, and let's do global style. So we need to render global style here onto the page, and then end that one off like so. So I'm just gonna wait for that. Okay, so that does render, but this one should be fixed, but it doesn't, so I don't know why. Anyways, let's have a look now, and you see that we have the Roboto font working on the page. So now that we have this, let's go back into root, and inside of root here, let's just create the basic styles for this page. So firstly, let's create a wrapper. So let's first import a styled from styled components. And then let's do const wrapper is equal to style.div. And this one's just a div which kind of wraps around the whole thing. So we do a box sizing border box. Let's give it a full height and a padding of 1 rem and a width of 100%. So now inside of here, we can just do, say, our wrapper. And let's just say hi. So now if we save that, go here, you see it just says hi on the page. And if I zoom out, it's actually that big. So it's quite a fair bit smaller. And inside of the wrapper here, we're going to put a container, and let's just write something inside the container. So for the container, the styles are going to be style.div like that, and then we're going to do a display flex flow row no wrap. Let's do margin 0 auto, and the width is going to be 80 rem. So now let's refresh over here. You'll see that it's now in the middle like that. We have container, and inside of container, we're going to have two things, which is why we used display flex here. So the first one's going to be the content. Put ASDF in there, and our content is going to go here. So const content is equal to style.div. Let's do something like that. Let's do flex1 margin right 1 rem, and let's add in a sidebar. So sidebar over here. Let's write something else inside of there so we can tell where it's going. Const sidebar is equal to style.div. Flex is 0 auto, and width is going to be 10 rem. So now that we have that, let's go back here. You'll see that we have this one over here on the side and this one over here. So if we right click, well, actually, if we go here and give the sidebar some color and also give the content some color, it's a great way to see how much room they actually take up. So this is the sidebar, this is the content, and this is our page. So now let's actually get rid of both of these. So do that and just get rid of that. And now let's just keep this basic layout. But first, let's have a look at maybe thinking about what we're going to implement next. So inside of user service here, you'll notice that inside of a server route over here, we have a route for adding a new user, but we don't actually have a way to sign in. So I think maybe now it's a good time to add in the sign in route. And then once we do that, we can add the accompanying functionality into the API gateway and also into the front end classifieds app. So what we're going to do now is add it into here. So to do this one, let's go up here and let's add in app.post, and we're going to add /sessions. So basically the idea here is that we're going to use .post on /sessions. Now you might be wondering why we don't use like .post /login, because technically inside of REST, what you want to do is REST is resource based. So for example, when you do post to /users, you're creating a new user. Now when we do post to /sessions, we're creating a new session, which is the concept of a login. So that's what we're going to do here. And let's do async request response and next like this. And basically the same check here. So if we don't have an email or a password, we're going to do that. And what we're going to do now is we're going to first put a try block. So try like that, and catch E. Oh, let me just fix this. Catch E, and we're going to do return next E. So we're going to pass the error along. And inside of here, we're going to first fetch the user. So const user is equal to await user.find1. And this one we're going to do, firstly, attributes is going to be this. So if you remember from before, in our side of models here, for the user, we actually do exclude password hash. So what this will do is this will get rid of password hash from the model because of basic security reasons. Now in this case here, we actually do want to include it. So we're going to just basically nullify all those kind of hidden attributes and put it back in. And then we're going to do where, and then email. And for the email, we're going to do rec.body.email like that. Curly brace, and then round bracket at the end like so. So now that we've got this, we've got the user, and if the user isn't defined, then we return next new error, and we do invalid email. So an invalid email has been given. And now we have this function here. So if not password compare sync request.body.password and then user.password hash. So if this doesn't match, then we do return next new error, and our error will be incorrect password. So now before we continue, let's actually add in this file here. So for password compare sync, we're going to just copy that name, go into helpers, right click new file, and put in password compare sync.js. So now inside of this file here, we're going to do import bcrypt from bcrypt.js like that. A const password compare sync is equal to password to test, password hash like that. And we're going to do bcrypt.compare sync, and we're going to do password to test and then password hash. So this is another thing which the bcrypt library can do. Not only can it hash your strings and your data, but it can also test it against a given hash. So this is what we have here. And then we do export default password compare sync here as well. So now that we have this file here, let's make sure that it is being used. I spelled that wrong. So I was wondering why this was gray, but that's fine now. And inside of routes here, let's just go here. We've got return next new error. And then underneath this section here, we're going to do const expires at is equal to add hours, new date. So it's going to be a number of hours from the current time, and then user session expiry hours. So this is just a constant. And for the sake of this project, I'm just going to define it inside of this file here, but you can imagine that you'd add this somewhere else. So for now, let's just do a const user session expiry in terms of hours is going to be 1 hour. So now in order to get add hours working, we actually have to go into our users service here, and let's do yarn add date fns. So it stands for date functions, and we're going to include add hours. So import add hours from date fns like that, and then we got add hours here for const expires at. Const session token is equal to generate UUID. So we can use the same function which we've used before and we've already included. So that's pretty nice. And then we can do const user session is equal to await user session dot create a new session here, and it's going to do expires at, and then ID is going to be session token, and then user ID is going to be user.id. So we basically pass in a whole bunch of stuff. The session token is it's going to be the ID here. Expires at is just the current time plus 1 hour, and then user ID is the ID from the user we selected. So we have these ones here, and then we do return res.json user session. So we return the session as JSON data. So now that we've got this, we can actually zoom this out a bit. It's just the formatting is a bit weird because of the size of my screen, but let's just keep it like this for now. And let's go back into Postman, and let's do localhost 7101 session like that. So sessions actually. So then here we've got email and password. So if I remember correctly, this email and password is valid. So let's first try one that's invalid. So let's spell password with an E, and let's click send. And it should return password. Okay, password compare sync is not defined because I forgot to include it. If we could just do password compare sync, that will add it in. So now we save that, wait for, okay. So we get incorrect password. And then if I change this password back to an O and I click send, then you'll see that we get, okay, user session is not defined. Yet another error, just add in user session there like so. And once you do that, if you click send one more time, and we seem like we can't get a response, but then now you see we get expires at ID, user ID, and created at. So now we have a new session, and this session will appear inside of user sessions. Now note the ID is F07FF, and that's the same ID here. So we just created a session, we essentially just logged it in. So this is the functionality inside of the user's service, but now let's have a look at implementing this inside of the API gateway. And I'm gonna show you what I'm gonna do inside of there. So now in the case of the API gateway, let's first go into GraphQL here, go into type defs, and for the mutation, we're going to add in a new mutation. So this one's going to be create user session. So it kind of matches the same naming convention. We actually do use the same thing here, so we can grab that. But this one here should say user session. Can we move this one in just a little bit? Okay, cool. So now we have user session here, and let's add in this as a type. So type user session. This one's going to take created at, which is a date, expires at, which is also a date, the ID, and this one's also going to take a user. So I'm going to show you how to implement that as well. So now up here, let's do a scalar date. So this date is a custom kind of type, and in our case here, we just use scalar to define that. So once you define a type as a scalar, you can actually add additional configuration as to how that data should be displayed. But in our case here, we can just keep it as a scalar and not do anything much about it. Okay, so now that we have the scalar here on the page and we have a create user session, let's go into resolvers, let's go into mutation, and let's create a new file, create user session like so. Okay, so now inside of this file here, what we're going to do is first go to create user, and let's basically copy the same thing over. And then for the create user session, we're going to turn this, so we're going to write just create user session here like that instead. We're going to create the session. So const user session is equal to user service.create user session. And let's minimize that. So we have this here. And before we continue, let's actually add it into root adapters and a user service. So inside of this file here, we're just going to go here and add in a static async create user session. And let's do email and password like that. And then let's do const body is equal to await got.post, and then users service API / sessions. And then we're going to do curly brace JSON, and we're going to pass in the email and the password, and we're going to return the JSON data. And then let's do return body to get back the body. So we do create user session, sessions, and we get a new session basically, and we pass it back. So now we have a new session inside of here. We need to do a wait here for the session. And what we're actually going to do is we're actually going to add this in as a cookie. So in order to add it as a cookie, we have to essentially do response.cookie, and we do here user session ID and so on. However, the problem is that inside of GraphQL, we don't directly have access to the response. But what we can actually do to get around this problem is inside of here, we need to go into server start server.js. And here where we have the Apollo server, we just need to add into here context, and then A is to A. So for our context here, essentially this defines how our GraphQL, the third parameter of our GraphQL resolvers work. So the third parameter is the context. First one's the object, the args, and then context, and then info. So the third one is context, and this defines how it is sent. Now, I don't know what it is by default, but for some reason by default, it doesn't quite work properly. But when we do A to A like that, and we just return it, just basically have a function that returns it as is, then we can actually access it. So we do that there, and then here we can do context as the third parameter there, and then we can do context.res.cookie, and that will actually give us access to that. So now that we have this, after the double quotes here, we're going to do user session.id, and then we're going to set this cookie to be HTTP only to be true. So essentially, just to explain here, the name of the cookie is user session ID. The value of the cookie is user session.id. So basically that's the ID of the user session, or other words, the session token. And then curly braces HTTP only is true. So what this means is that some cookies can be accessed by your browser. So the JavaScript code running in your browser can access some cookies. However, other cookies can't be accessed, and those are known as HTTP only cookies. So the benefit of not allowing your browser to access it is that you actually have a bit more security, because it is not kind of sent to all of the JavaScript code on the page. So this is really important to include. And now let's just do return user session. So we kind of split it up because we had to do this between this and that. So we just put it in a variable and then just return it afterwards. So now that we have this code here, we should be able to get create user session working. So now if we go back into Chrome over here, go to the playground, zoom this in just a tad, maybe a little bit more. And let's do a create user session, and let's do the ID like that. And we do a test1@example.com, and let's just do a quick refresh and then click play. And we get null for this, which is a bit weird, but let's see why. So is it, okay, I forgot to include it here. So we just need to include that mutation inside of index.js here. And now that we've done that, let's go back here. Let's click play. Users service API is not defined. I typed API again. I should have typed users service URI. So let's just fix that up real quick. I actually don't know where my thing on the side went, so that's kind of weird as well. But anyways, let's just click play one more time, and we get a new session. So now this one's 6912, and we have 6912 in here as well. So our create user session method is working. So now the API gateway is kind of working in this regard, as is the user service. And now we're going to hook both of these up to the classifieds app. So inside of here, we have content and we have a sidebar. So now for the sidebar here, what we're going to do is add in a login component. So inside a root here, let's create a new file, and let's just do login.js like that.